My grandmother said, "You'll never be part of this family if you keep living like that," then left me everything in her will. The call came at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. My grandmother had died in her sleep. I hadn't spoken to her in 3 years. Not since I'd moved in with my boyfriend Devin against her wishes. She'd made it very clear. Traditional marriage or nothing. No gray areas in her world. The funeral was awkward. My parents barely looked at me. My uncle refused to shake my hand. My aunt whispered something to my cousin that made them both glare. Apparently, living with someone before marriage was still the ultimate family disgrace, even in 2024. I sat in the back row, wondering why I'd even come. Then the lawyer read the will. Everything went silent. The brownstone in Brooklyn worth $2.3 million. The investment accounts, the antique jewelry collection, the stock portfolio my grandfather had built in the 60s, all of it. To me, my mother actually gasped. My uncle stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "This is a mistake," Dad said. His voice shook. She was confused at the end. Dementia. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "Mrs. Rothman updated this will 6 weeks ago. She was evaluated by 2 physicians. Completely sound mind." I sat frozen while my family exploded. Accusations flew. They'd been the good children, the obedient ones. They'd visited every Sunday while I'd been living in sin. How could she reward my disrespect? That night, I found a letter in the manila envelope the lawyer handed me, her handwriting, shaky but clear. "Dearest Willow," it began. "By now, they're furious. Good. Let me tell you something I never told anyone. When I was 19, I fell in love with a jazz musician named Raymond. Your grandfather was already courting me, but Raymond made me feel alive. We planned to run away together. Then I got pregnant. My hands trembled. My grandmother had never mentioned any of this. My parents forced me to marry your grandfather. Raymond left town. I spent 54 years in a marriage I didn't choose, watching my dreams disappear. I became exactly what they wanted. The perfect wife, the perfect grandmother. I enforced every rule they'd used to trap me, and I watched you grow up." The letter continued. "When you moved in with Devin, I said those terrible things because that's what my mother would have said. But after you left, I couldn't stop thinking. You did what I never could. You chose your own path. You chose yourself." I wiped my eyes, smudging the ink slightly. "This money is my apology. But more than that, it's your freedom. Don't waste it being who they want you to be. I wasted my entire life. Don't waste yours. P.S. Check the safety deposit box. Key is in the blue velvet bag. Box 847 at First National." The next morning, I went to the bank. Inside box 847, I found letters. Dozens of them, all addressed to Raymond Carter in New Orleans. All returned, unopened, marked, address unknown. Letters my grandmother had written for decades, trying to find him. The last one was dated 3 months before she died. Underneath the letters was a birth certificate. Not mine. Someone named James Raymond, born 9 months before my grandmother married my grandfather. Given up for adoption the day he was born. My grandmother had another child, a son no one knew about. And according to the lawyer's business card tucked inside the certificate, someone had been making inquiries about accessing my grandmother's estate records 6 weeks ago, right when she updated her will. Someone else knew about James, someone who might want a piece of that $2.3 million, and I had no idea who was coming for it. The lawyer's name was printed on the card, Gerald Hutchins. I'd never heard of him. The card belonged to a different firm than the one that had handled the will reading. I called the number immediately. "Hutchins and Associates," a receptionist answered. "I need to speak with Gerald Hutchins. It's about the Rothman estate." A pause. "Mr. Hutchins is with a client. May I ask who's calling?" "Willow Rothman. I'm the primary beneficiary." Another pause. Longer this time. "Please hold." I waited 3 minutes. Then a man's voice came on, smooth and careful. "Ms. Rothman, I was wondering when you'd call. Who hired you to look into my grandmother's records?" "I'm afraid that's confidential. Someone's trying to contest the will." "Not exactly," he said. "My client was simply establishing certain facts. Family history can be complicated." "James Raymond," I said. "That's who you were researching." Silence. Then, "I think we should meet. Are you available this afternoon?" I should have said no. Should have consulted with my own lawyer first. But I needed answers. "Where?" "My office. 2 p.m. Come alone." He hung up before I could respond. Devin found me sitting on our bedroom floor, surrounded by the letters. "What's going on?" I told him everything. About the will, the letters, the secret son. His face went pale. "Willow, this sounds dangerous. Someone's been planning this for weeks. I have to know who it is." "Then I'm coming with you." He said, "Come alone." I don't care what he said. Devin grabbed his jacket. "Someone's after $2.3 million. You're not walking into that by yourself." Hutchins and Associates occupied the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse in Red Hook. The elevator creaked. The hallway smelled like old coffee and printer toner. Not exactly the offices of a successful law firm. The receptionist was a woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled into a tight bun. She looked us over. "Ms. Rothman?" "Yes. And you are?" She looked at Devin. "With her." Mr. Hutchins said alone. Then Mr. Hutchins can deal with both of us or neither of us. She picked up her phone, whispered something, then nodded toward a door. "Go ahead." The office was small. Cramped bookcases lined 3 walls. Gerald Hutchins sat behind a desk covered in file folders and legal pads. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with tired eyes and a coffee stain on his tie. "Ms. Rothman?" He didn't stand. "I see you brought company. This is Devin. He stays." Hutchins shrugged. "Suit yourself. Please, sit." We sat in 2 chairs that probably came from a yard sale. Devin's hand found mine. "Let's be direct," Hutchins said. 6 weeks ago, a man named Thomas Whitmore hired me to research your grandmother's past, specifically to find documentation of a child she gave birth to in 1951. James Raymond. Yes, Mr. Whitmore claimed to be James Raymond's son, your grandmother's grandson. He wanted to know if he had any legal claim to her estate. My stomach dropped. And Legally? No. Your grandmother's will is ironclad. She was evaluated, declared competent, and made her wishes crystal clear. But Mr. Whitmore wasn't interested in legal channels. What does that mean? Hutchins leaned forward. It means he hired me to do research, but fired me when I told him contesting the will would be futile. That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't heard from him since. Why did you leave your card in the safety deposit box? I didn't. His face was serious now. I never had access to that box. Your grandmother must have put it there. She wanted you to find me. Why? Because she knew Thomas Whitmore wouldn't stop, and she wanted you to be prepared. Devin squeezed my hand harder. Prepared for what? For whatever he's planning. Hutchins pulled out a folder. Your grandmother came to see me 5 weeks ago, right after Whitmore fired me. She told me everything. About Raymond Carter. About giving up her baby. About how she'd been trying to find James Raymond for 50 years. Then, suddenly, James's son appears, claiming his father died last year, and left him documents proving his lineage. Documents. Letters. Hospital records. Photos. According to Whitmore, James Raymond spent his whole life searching for his birth mother. He found her 6 months before he died, but he never contacted her, just watched from a distance. I thought of my grandmother, writing those letters, never knowing her son had found her, had watched her. Why didn't he reach out? Whitmore said his father didn't want to disrupt her life. He'd read about the Rothman family in society pages, knew she'd built a respectable life. He watched her at the grocery store, at church, at family events. He saw you too. The room felt smaller. He watched me. Your grandmother became obsessed with the idea that he'd seen her as a disappointment. She updated her will immediately, left everything to you with explicit instructions that no other heirs could claim the estate. She was protecting me from Whitmore. Yes, but there's more. Hutchins opened the folder. Inside was a photocopy of a photograph. A man in his 60s standing outside my grandmother's brownstone. He had her eyes, her nose. This is James Raymond, taken 2 years before he died. I stared at the face of the uncle I'd never known existed. And this, Hutchins pulled out another photo, is Thomas Whitmore. The man in the second photo was maybe 35, tall, dark hair, sharp features, and angry eyes, the kind of eyes that held grudges. Your grandmother was terrified of him, Hutchins said quietly. She met with him once, at his request. He demanded money, called it his birthright. She refused and he threatened her, said he'd destroy everything she'd built, expose her secrets, ruin her family's name. Did she call the police? No, she was too ashamed, too afraid of what her children would think, so she came to me instead. To do what? To give you this. He handed me a thick envelope. Everything I found about Thomas Whitmore, where he lives, where he works, his criminal history, and a warning. He's been arrested 3 times for fraud, twice for assault. He's desperate and dangerous. Your grandmother wanted you to know what you're dealing with. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were police reports, court documents, credit records. Thomas Whitmore was drowning in debt. $340,000 owed to various creditors, eviction notices, gambling problems. He'd been fired from his last 3 jobs. He needs that money, I whispered. Badly, Hutchins agreed. And he knows he can't get it legally, so he's going to try something else. Like what? I don't know, but your grandmother wanted you warned. She also wanted you to have this. He handed me another envelope, sealed with red wax. My name was written on it in her handwriting. I broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Willow, it read. If you're reading this, I'm gone. Thomas Whitmore is James's son, but he's nothing like his father. James was kind, gentle. He used to sit on the bench across from the brownstone and sketch the building. I found one of his drawings after he died. He'd written on the back, I hope she's happy here. He was a good man who deserved better. His son is not. Be careful. Trust Gerald. And remember, you don't owe this family anything. Not your parents, not your uncle, and certainly not Thomas Whitmore. You owe yourself a life. Don't let them take it. Love, Grandma. I couldn't speak. Devin read over my shoulder, his breath warm against my neck. She died 3 days after writing that, Hutchins said softly. Heart attack in her sleep. Natural causes according to the autopsy. But I've always wondered, you think Whitmore killed her? I think the timing is convenient, and I think you need to be very careful. We left Hutchins's office with the envelope tucked under my arm. The afternoon sun felt too bright. My head pounded. We should go to the police, Devin said. And tell them what? A man might be planning something? We don't have proof. We have his criminal history, which shows he's a con artist, not a murderer. Devin stopped walking. Willow, listen to yourself. Your grandmother dies right after refusing to give this guy money. That's not a coincidence. The autopsy said natural causes. Autopsies can miss things. I knew he was right, but I also knew the police wouldn't do anything without evidence, and evidence was exactly what I didn't have. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered it anyway. Willow Rothman? A man's voice. Not Hutchins. Who is this? A friend. Someone who wants to help you. I don't need help. You will. Thomas Whitmore isn't working alone. My blood went cold. What? Meet me tonight, 9:30 p.m., the coffee shop on 5th and Union. Come alone this time. Who are you? Someone who knew your Uncle James. Someone who knows what Whitmore is planning. If you want to stop him, you'll come. The line went dead. Devin was staring at me. What was that? Someone who says Whitmore isn't working alone. This is insane. We're going to the police. After I meet with this person. Willow. Devin. Someone knew James. Someone knows what's happening. I have to find out. Then I'm coming with you. He said alone. I don't care. I'm not letting you walk into another trap. We fought about it for an hour. Finally, Devin agreed to wait outside the coffee shop, close enough to intervene if something went wrong, far enough to not scare off whoever was coming. The coffee shop was nearly empty when I arrived at 8:55 p.m., a couple in the corner sharing a laptop, a college student with headphones, a barista wiping down tables. I ordered a black coffee I didn't want and sat by the window where Devin could see me. At exactly 9 p.m., a woman walked in. She was maybe 60, with silver hair and sharp cheekbones. She wore an expensive coat and carried herself like someone who was used to being obeyed. She sat down across from me without asking. Willow Rothman, you're the one who called? I'm Patricia Reynolds. I was James Raymond's neighbor for 15 years. I'm also the person who told Thomas Whitmore about his grandmother. My hands clenched around the coffee cup. You're working with him? Not anymore. She pulled off her gloves slowly, deliberately. Thomas came to me 6 months ago. Said he was researching his father's past. I told him about James's obsession with finding his birth mother, about the box of documents James kept, letters, photos, adoption papers. Thomas promised he just wanted to know his family history, but that wasn't true. No. After James died, Thomas had been going through his father's belongings and found the documents. He came to me because he knew I'd helped James research. I was a genealogist before I retired. I didn't realize he was planning to extort money from an old woman. How did you find out? Thomas bragged about it to his girlfriend. She got scared and called me, told me everything. By then it was too late. Your grandmother had already died. You think he killed her? Patricia's eyes met mine. I think James died of a heart attack at 69. I think your grandmother died of a heart attack at 86. And I think Thomas Whitmore is very good at making stressful situations for people with heart conditions. That's not proof. No, but it's a pattern. And I think you're next on the list. The coffee cup slipped from my hands. Brown liquid spread across the table. The barista looked over, concerned. Next? Thomas is planning something for the reading of your grandmother's personal effects. It's scheduled for next week. He's going to be there. How? He's not family. He has a lawyer, one who specializes in estate disputes. They're claiming James Raymond was never legally adopted, that the birth certificate proves he's your grandmother's biological son. They're going to argue for a share of the estate based on genetic rights. Hutchins said that wouldn't work. It won't. But that's not the real plan. The lawyer is a distraction. While everyone's focused on the legal argument, Thomas is going to steal the jewelry collection. I stared at her. What? Your grandmother's jewelry is worth $800,000. It's being held in a secure facility until the personal effects reading. Thomas has connections with the security company. He's planning to switch the real pieces with fakes during the chaos of the legal challenge. That's insane. That's Thomas. He's been planning this for months. The legal challenge will fail, but by the time anyone realizes the jewelry's been swapped, he'll be long gone. Why are you telling me this? Patricia's expression softened. Because James was a good man. He didn't deserve a son like Thomas. And your grandmother didn't deserve to die afraid. James used to talk about her constantly. Wondered what she was like, if she thought about him, if she regretted giving him up. He loved her without ever meeting her. That kind of love deserves to be honored. What do you want me to do? Stop him. The reading is in 6 days. Find a way to protect the jewelry. And watch your back. Thomas knows you met with Hutchins today. How? He has someone following you. A private investigator named Lenny Costa. Drives a gray Honda Civic. Been tailing you since the funeral. I thought about the gray car I'd noticed behind us earlier. Thought it was paranoia. Costa reports everything to Thomas. Where you go? Who you meet? He knows about Devin. Knows about this meeting. But he doesn't know what we're discussing. I made sure we weren't close enough for him to hear. Where is he now? Parked across the street. Blue jacket. Sitting behind the wheel. I glanced out the window. Sure enough, a gray Civic. A man in a blue jacket behind the wheel. Watching. What happens if I can't stop Thomas? Patricia stood up. Then he gets away with $800,000 of jewelry and a murder. Maybe 2, if you're not careful. She pulled on her gloves. I've told you everything I know. The rest is up to you. She walked out without looking back. I sat frozen, watching Costa watch me. Devin appeared beside my table 30 seconds later. Who was that? Someone who just made everything worse. I told him everything on the walk back to our apartment. About the jewelry theft. About Costa following us. About Thomas's plan. Devin's face got darker with every word. We're going to the police right now. With what? Patricia's story? She has no proof. And even if they believe us, what are they going to do? Arrest Thomas for planning a crime? That's not how it works. So what, we just let him steal $800,000? No, we stop him ourselves. Devin grabbed my arm, making me face him. Willow, this isn't a movie. This is a dangerous criminal who might have killed your grandmother. We are not playing vigilante. Then what do you suggest? We hire security for the reading. We tell the facility about the threat. We let professionals handle it. And if that doesn't work, then at least we tried through the proper channels. He was right. I knew he was right. But I also knew that Thomas Whitmore had been planning this for months. He had inside connections. He had resources. Warning the facility might just make him change his plan to something worse. Fine, I said. We'll try it your way first. We called the facility the next morning. The manager, a woman named Diane Kruger, sounded skeptical. You're saying someone's planning to steal items during the reading? Yes, I have information that... Do you have evidence? Not physical evidence, but... Then I can't increase security based on speculation. We have standard protocols in place. They're more than adequate. This person has connections with your security company. I find that highly unlikely. Our security staff is thoroughly vetted. Please just check your employee records. See if anyone has connections to Thomas Whitmore. A long sigh. I'll look into it, but I'm not making any promises. She hung up. Devin looked at me. See? She's taking it seriously. She sounded like she thought I was crazy. She said she'd look into it. I didn't argue, but I knew we were on our own. The next 3 days crawled by. I researched Thomas Whitmore obsessively. Found his social media accounts, all privacy locked. Found an old mugshot from an arrest in Florida. Found a failed business venture that had cost investors $200,000. Everything confirmed what I already knew. He was desperate, dangerous, and about to become $800,000 richer. I also found the private investigator. Lenny Costa had a website advertising surveillance services. Starting rate, $500 a day. which meant Thomas was spending thousands just to watch me. That kind of investment meant he was serious. Devin caught me at 2:09 a.m. staring at my laptop in the dark. You need to sleep. I need to figure out how he's planning to switch the jewelry. The facility will handle it. Will they? Because I called Diane again today. She said she reviewed the security staff and found nothing suspicious. She basically told me to stop bothering her. Devin sat down beside me. What are you thinking? I'm thinking we need a plan B. What kind of plan B? The kind where we show up to that reading with our own security. Someone who can watch for the switch. Someone who can stop Thomas if he tries anything. Where are we going to find someone like that? I don't know, but we have 3 days to figure it out. The answer came from an unexpected place. The next morning, my mother called. First time since the funeral. Willow, Mom, we need to talk about your grandmother's jewelry. Of course. That's why she was calling. What about it? It should be divided among the family, not just kept by you. The will says it all goes to me. The will says the estate goes to you. The jewelry was separate. It belonged to our side of the family long before your grandmother married into it. That's not true. It is true. Those pieces came from my great-grandmother. They should come back to us. Mom, I'm not fighting about this. Then agree to share it. It's the right thing to do. I'll think about it. Willow? I hung up, but the call gave me an idea. If my family was fighting about the jewelry, they'd be watching the reading closely. And if they were watching, maybe I could use that. I called my uncle. He answered on the 5th ring. What do you want? I want to propose a deal. No deals? You stole our inheritance. Someone's planning to steal the jewelry. Silence. Then, what are you talking about? I told him about Thomas Whitmore, about the planned theft, about Costa following me. I left out the part about Thomas possibly killing Grandma. Uncle Paul wouldn't believe that, but he'd believe someone was after money. So you want me to do what exactly? Be there at the reading. Watch for anything suspicious. If Thomas tries something, you'll be close enough to stop him. Why would I help you? Because if the jewelry gets stolen, none of us get anything. It'll be tied up in insurance claims for years. But if we stop the theft, Mom's right. The jewelry should be shared among the family. You're saying you'll split it? I'm saying we can discuss it after we make sure it doesn't get stolen. Another pause. Fine. I'll be there. But if you're lying about this, I'm not. He hung up without saying goodbye. Devin stared at me. You just promised to give up $800,000 worth of jewelry. I promised to discuss it. Big difference. Willow? We need people watching. My uncle's an asshole, but he's observant. And he's motivated. He'll notice if something's wrong. And if Thomas realizes you've got people watching him, then he backs off, which is exactly what we want. Devin didn't look convinced, but he didn't argue. We spent the next 2 days preparing. I memorized every photo of Thomas Whitmore I could find, studied Patricia's description of his lawyer, made a list of everyone who'd be at the reading. The day before the reading, I got another call. Unknown number again. Willow Rothman? Who is this? Costa. The guy who's been following you. My heart stopped. What do you want? To give you a heads up. Thomas knows you talked to Patricia Reynolds. He knows you're planning something. Why are you telling me? Because I'm done working for that psychopath. He hasn't paid me in 2 weeks, and I don't get involved in theft. I signed up for surveillance, not crime. So what now? Now I'm getting out of town. But I wanted to warn you. Thomas knows you'll have people watching tomorrow. He's changed his plan. To what? I don't know. He stopped telling me details. But whatever it is, it's happening during the reading, not after. Be careful. The line went dead. Devin found me sitting on the floor of our bedroom. What happened? Costa called. Thomas knows we're onto him. That's good, right? Maybe he'll call it off. No, he's just changing the plan, and we don't know what the new plan is. Then we don't go tomorrow. We have to go. I'm the primary beneficiary. If I'm not there, the reading gets postponed, and that gives Thomas more time to plan. Willow, this is getting too dangerous. I know, but we're in it now. We can't back out. The reading was scheduled for 2 p.m. at the Secure Assets facility in Manhattan. We arrived at 1:45 p.m. My uncle was already there, standing by the entrance like a bouncer. My mother was with him, so was my aunt, and my cousin. The whole family had shown up. Mom saw me and marched over. You told the whole family someone's planning to steal the jewelry, because someone is. And you think we're going to believe this convenient story right after you inherited everything? Believe what you want. Just pay attention during the reading. Diane Kruger appeared, looking harassed. If everyone could please come inside. We're ready to begin. The viewing room was smaller than I expected. A long table in the center with 6 chairs. Glass cases along the walls. Empty for now. Everything was white, sterile, like a hospital. Diane stood at the head of the table. The personal effects of Mrs. Ruth Rothman are stored in our vault. We'll bring them out one section at a time. Please do not touch anything unless explicitly told you may. Photography is not permitted. Any questions? My uncle raised his hand. What about security? 2 guards are posted outside the vault at all times. The room is monitored by 6 cameras, and I'll be present throughout the viewing. Is that sufficient? I guess. Diane left to retrieve the first section. The moment she was gone, my family turned on me. This is ridiculous, Dad said. You've always been dramatic. Someone's been following me for days. You probably just noticed the same car twice and made up a whole conspiracy theory. I met with the man's neighbor. She told me everything. This mysterious neighbor who conveniently knows all about a theft that hasn't happened yet? My aunt sneered. How convenient. Devin squeezed my hand under the table. Let's just get through this. Diane returned, wheeling a cart. On it were 3 jewelry boxes, velvet-covered and ornate. She opened the first one. Inside were emerald earrings, a sapphire necklace, and a diamond bracelet. Even from across the table, I could see them sparkle. These pieces were appraised at $240,000 collectively, Diane said. They've been in the Rothman family since 1952. My mother was crying. I remember when she wore those emeralds to my wedding. The second box held rings, 7 of them, each worth more than my annual salary. The third box had brooches and pins, including one shaped like a hummingbird that was my grandmother's favorite. Diane wheeled the cart back out. I'll retrieve the next section. That's when I noticed it. A man in a security uniform standing by the door. He'd appeared while we were all focused on the jewelry. Tall, dark hair, sharp features. Thomas Whitmore. I stood up so fast my chair fell over. That's him. Everyone turned. Thomas smiled. The guard beside him looked confused. Ma'am, this is Officer Reynolds. He's been working here for 3 months. His name isn't Reynolds, it's Whitmore. And he's here to steal the jewelry. Thomas's smile widened. I think you're confused. I've seen your photo. You're James Raymond's son. I don't know what you're talking about. Diane, check his employee records. His real name is Thomas Whitmore. Diane looked between us, uncertain. Officer Reynolds has excellent credentials. He passed our background check. Under a fake name. Call the police right now. I think you need to calm down, Thomas said. His hand moved to his belt, to his radio. I'll call for assistance. Don't let him leave this room. My uncle stood up. What's going on? That man killed my grandmother. He's here to steal the jewelry. Thomas's expression changed. The smile vanished. Something cold and calculating replaced it. You can't prove any of that. I have witness statements. I have your criminal record. He moved fast, crossed the room in 3 steps and grabbed Diane, one arm around her throat. The other hand pulled out a knife from somewhere. The blade pressed against her jugular. Everyone sit down. Now. The room erupted. My mother screamed. My uncle lunged forward and Thomas pressed the knife harder. A thin line of blood appeared on Diane's neck. I said sit down. We sat. Devin tried to pull me back, but I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Here's what's going to happen, Thomas said calmly. You're all going to stay quiet, and I'm going to walk out of here with what I came for. The jewelry's in the vault, I said. You can't reach it. You're right. I can't. He gestured toward the door behind him. It opened. A woman walked in wearing scrubs. She had a cart identical to Diane's, but the jewelry boxes on this cart were empty. Meet my associate, Thomas said. She's been working in the medical office 3 floors down. Easy enough to fake credentials and rent space in this building. No one checks too carefully at a place like this. The cameras are recording you, my uncle said. Recording Officer Reynolds subduing a violent visitor while his colleague assists an emergency situation? That's what it'll look like. By the time anyone reviews the footage, we'll be gone. And the real jewelry will be right here on this cart, hidden in the false bottom. The woman in scrubs moved to where Diane had left the cart with the real jewelry. She worked quickly, efficiently, transferring pieces into the false bottom of her cart. The whole process took maybe 90 seconds. Perfect, Thomas said. Now, we're all going to wait here for exactly 10 minutes. That'll give us time to get downstairs and out of the building. If anyone moves before then, Diane gets a second smile. Understood? Nobody spoke. The woman in scrubs rolled her cart toward the door. That's when Devin moved. He didn't go for Thomas. That would have gotten Diane killed. Instead, he went for the cart, grabbed it, yanking it away from the woman in scrubs. Jewelry boxes crashed to the floor, spilling precious stones across white tile. Thomas shoved Diane away and lunged for Devin. The knife flashed. Devin dodged, barely, and the blade caught his shoulder instead of his throat. Blood bloomed across his shirt. My uncle finally moved. He crashed into Thomas from the side, and they both went down. The knife skittered across the floor. I dove for it, grabbed it, and held it up with shaking hands. Don't move. Thomas was pinned under my uncle. The woman in scrubs ran for the door. My cousin tripped her. She went down hard, her head hitting the edge of the table with a crack. Diane was gasping, hands at her throat, but alive. Mom was calling 911. Dad was trying to stop Devin's bleeding with his jacket. Thomas looked up at me. You can't prove anything. It's your word against mine. There are 6 cameras in this room. Footage can be edited, deleted. My lawyer is very good. Your lawyer can explain it to the police. Sirens wailed outside, getting closer. Thomas's expression never changed. This isn't over. Yeah, I said. It is. The police arrested Thomas and the woman in scrubs, whose real name was Angela Pitt. She'd been working with him for 2 years, running similar cons across 3 states. Devin needed 12 stitches in his shoulder, but the knife had missed anything vital. Diane had a minor cut that required bandaging and probably years of therapy. My family stayed through the whole ordeal, giving statements, helping clean up the jewelry. My uncle even apologized, sort of. I guess you weren't being dramatic. I guess not. Mom hugged me for the first time in 3 years. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. It's okay. No, it's not. You were right about everything, and I was awful at the funeral. You were grieving. That's no excuse. She pulled back, tears on her face. Your grandmother was trying to tell us something with that will, that we'd been wrong. About you, about Devin, about everything. I just wasn't ready to hear it. Are you ready now? I'm trying to be. It took 3 hours to sort everything out. The jewelry was returned to the facility's vault, this time with actual security measures. Thomas and Angela were charged with attempted robbery, assault, and a dozen other crimes. Lenny Costa appeared at the police station voluntarily, offering to testify in exchange for immunity. He had recordings of Thomas planning the theft. Apparently, he'd been covering his own ass the whole time. Patricia Reynolds also came forward. She had James Raymond's documents. All of them. Letters he'd written but never sent. Photos of my grandmother taken from a distance. A journal where he'd recorded every moment he'd watched her. It was heartbreaking and beautiful and sad all at once. The police investigated my grandmother's death. The autopsy had ruled it natural causes, but under scrutiny there were questions. Thomas had visited her 3 days before she died. The doorman remembered him leaving her apartment looking angry. My grandmother had called her doctor the next day complaining of chest pains, but she'd refused to go to the hospital. 2 days later, she was dead. The DA couldn't prove murder. The stress of Thomas's visit might have triggered the heart attack, but that wasn't a crime. Not one they could prosecute. Thomas was looking at 10 to 15 years for the attempted theft. It would have to be enough. Devin and I went home that night exhausted. His shoulder hurt despite the pain medication. My head pounded from crying and adrenaline. We collapsed on the couch together. That was the worst day of my life, he said. You saved the jewelry. I got stabbed. You saved Diane's life. I got stabbed. I know, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just promise me something. What? No more family drama for at least a year. I need recovery time. I laughed. It felt good. Deal. The next few weeks were a blur of legal proceedings, insurance claims, and family dinners. My parents invited us over, then invited us again. Slowly, carefully, we started rebuilding something. Not the relationship we'd had before. Something different, something honest. My uncle stopped treating me like a criminal. My aunt stopped whispering. My cousin actually asked Devin about his shoulder and seemed genuinely concerned. The jewelry stayed in the vault while lawyers figured out the estate. My grandmother's will was clear, but the jewelry's history was complicated. My mother was right. Some pieces had come from her side of the family. After 3 mediation sessions, we reached an agreement. I kept 2/3. The rest was divided among my parents, uncle, and aunt. Everyone walked away with something. More importantly, everyone walked away speaking to each other. I found James Raymond's son, not Thomas, the real James Raymond Jr., who'd been raised by Raymond Carter's sister in New Orleans. He was 68, a retired music teacher, and completely shocked to learn about his half-brother Thomas's crimes. I knew Dad gave up a child, he told me over the phone, but he never told me he'd found her. Never mentioned Thomas either. Thomas used your father's name to gain access. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. I'm the one who's sorry. Dad was a good man. He wouldn't want his name used like that. Would you like to meet? I have his journals, his photos, everything he collected about my grandmother. There was a long pause. I'd like that very much. We met at a cafe in New Orleans 2 months later. James Raymond Jr. looked just like his father. Same eyes, same gentle expression. He cried when I showed him the journals. He loved her, he whispered. All those years. She loved him too. She never stopped looking. What a waste. They could have had 50 years together. Instead, they had this. I gestured to the journals. It's not nothing. No, I suppose it's not. James Raymond Jr. didn't want any money, didn't want the jewelry. He just wanted the journals and photos. These are my inheritance, he said. These memories of a father who loved deeply enough to watch from a distance. That's worth more than any brownstone. I gave him everything. The letters, the photos, the journal. He left New Orleans carrying a box full of memories and a connection to the family he'd never known. Devin proposed 3 months after the attempted robbery. We were eating takeout on our couch. His shoulder finally healed when he suddenly got down on one knee. I know this is supposed to be romantic, he said, but I got stabbed for you, and I'd do it again. So will you marry me? I laughed and cried and said yes. My grandmother's brownstone sold for $2.4 million. I donated half to a foundation supporting adopted children searching for their birth family. The other half went into investments. Safe, stable, the kind of future my grandfather would have approved of. Devin and I bought a smaller place in Queens, 2 bedrooms, a tiny yard, room for the life we wanted to build. My mother stood in our new living room the day we moved in. She would have been proud, she said quietly. Your grandmother, she would have been so proud. Of the house? Of you, for choosing yourself, for not letting us pressure you into a life you didn't want. She wiped her eyes. I spent 40 years doing everything my mother wanted. It made me miserable, and I almost made you miserable too. You were doing what you thought was right. I was doing what was easy, what was expected. There's a difference. She hugged me tight. Thank you for being braver than I was. The wedding was small, just family and close friends. We held it in the backyard of our new house. Devin's shoulder had a nasty scar, but he wore his suit jacket unbuttoned anyway. Battle scar, he joked. Proves I'm tough. My uncle gave a toast to Willow and Devin, who taught this family that love isn't about following rules. It's about showing up when it matters. My mother cried through the ceremony, happy tears this time. And I wore my grandmother's emerald earrings, the ones she'd worn to my parents' wedding, the ones Thomas had tried to steal. They were heavy against my earlobes, a reminder of everything we'd fought for. 6 months after the wedding, I got a letter. The return address was a prison in upstate New York. Thomas Whitmore. Devin wanted to burn it without reading it. Don't give him the satisfaction. But I was curious. I opened it carefully. Willow, it began. No greeting. No pretense of civility. You think you won. You got the money, the house, the happy ending. But you stole it. Just like your grandmother stole my father's childhood. Just like your grandfather stole Raymond Carter's life. This family is built on theft, on secrets, on lies. You're no different than the rest of them. You just got lucky. Remember that every time you spend that money, every time you look at that jewelry, you're living on stolen time, stolen opportunities, stolen lives. One day you'll realize it. And when you do, remember I tried to take back what was ours. Remember I was the only one honest about what this family really is. Thieves, all of you. I read it twice. Then I did burn it. What did it say? Devin asked. Nothing important. You sure? I'm sure. But late that night, I couldn't sleep. Thomas's words echoed in my head. Was he right? Had my grandmother stolen Raymond Carter's life by marrying someone else? Had my grandfather stolen James Raymond's childhood by forcing my grandmother into a marriage she didn't want? I thought about the journals, about Raymond watching from a distance, about James Raymond searching for his mother for 50 years, about my grandmother writing letters that would never be delivered. Everyone in this story had made choices. Some were forced, some were freely made, but they were all choices. And the consequences rippled out, touching lives decades later. My grandmother had chosen to give me her estate, not because I deserved it more than anyone else, but because she wanted me to have the freedom she'd never had, the freedom to choose, to make mistakes, to build a life on my own terms. Thomas was wrong. This wasn't about theft. It was about inheritance, not money or jewelry or brownstones, the inheritance of choice, the inheritance of freedom, the inheritance of being allowed to be fully, completely yourself without apology. That was what my grandmother had given me, and that was what I'd pass on. Devin found me at 3 a.m., sitting in our kitchen staring at nothing. Can't sleep? Just thinking. About Thomas, about my grandmother, about all the choices she never got to make, about the life she lived because she was forced into it. Devin sat down beside me. You're not her. I know. You chose me. You chose this life. Nobody forced you. I know that too. Then why are you sitting in the dark? Because I'm grateful. Because I almost let them take this away. My family, the rules, the expectations. I almost gave in. But you didn't. No, I didn't. He took my hand. Your grandmother knew you wouldn't. That's why she left you everything. She bet on you being stronger than she was. And she was right. We sat in the quiet dark holding hands. Outside, the city hummed with life. Millions of people making millions of choices. Some good, some bad. All of them leading somewhere. Devin and I had chosen each other. Chosen this tiny house in Queens. Chosen a life that made sense to us even if it confused everyone else. And we'd keep choosing. Every day. Every moment. That was the real inheritance. The freedom to choose. The courage to live with those choices. The strength to keep going even when it was hard. My grandmother had given me that. Not the money, not the jewelry, not the brownstone. She'd given me permission to be myself, to want different things, to make different choices, to live a different life. And I wasn't going to waste it. 6 months later, I found out I was pregnant. Devin cried when I told him. Happy tears. Terrified tears. The kind of tears that come when you realize your whole life is about to change. What if I'm a terrible father? He whispered. You won't be. What if I make the same mistakes my parents made? Then you'll apologize and do better. That's all anyone can do. We told my parents together. Mom cried. Dad actually smiled. A grandchild, he said, like he couldn't quite believe it. You're happy? I asked, surprised. Of course I'm happy. Why wouldn't I be? Because we're not married in a church. Because we're living together. Because none of that matters, Mom interrupted. What matters is you're happy and healthy and loved. That's all that ever mattered. We just forgot for a while. The baby came in early spring, a girl. We named her Ruth Raymond, after both of our grandmothers. Devin's middle name is Raymond. It felt right to honor them both. My mother was there when she was born. She held Ruth with shaking hands and wept. She looks just like you did. Those same eyes. She has Devin's nose. And your stubbornness, I bet. Definitely. I watched my mother with my daughter and thought about cycles, about patterns, about the things we inherit beyond money and jewelry and brownstones. Mom had inherited her mother's rigid expectations, had passed them on to me, but I'd broken the cycle. And maybe, just maybe, Ruth would inherit something different, something better, the freedom to choose, the courage to be herself, the knowledge that love isn't about obedience. It's about showing up, being present, supporting the people you care about even when they choose paths you don't understand. Thomas Whitmore was released after serving 8 years. I got a notification from the Victim Services Program. Devin wanted to move. What if he comes after us again? He won't. You don't know that. I know he's 53 years old and tired. I know he lost everything trying to get revenge on a dead woman. I know whatever anger drove him burned itself out in prison. I was right. Thomas never contacted us, never came near us. According to Lenny Costa, who'd stayed in touch, Thomas had moved to Florida, got a job at a hardware store, lived alone in a studio apartment. The fight had gone out of him. Sometimes I wondered what he thought about, if he ever regretted his choices, if he ever forgave his father for loving a woman from a distance instead of being present for his son, if he ever understood that some things can't be stolen because they were never really there to take. My grandmother's love for Raymond Carter wasn't something Thomas could claim. Neither was James Raymond's quiet devotion. Those weren't inheritances. They were gifts given freely, even if they were never received. Ruth turned 5 the year my mother got sick. Cancer. The same kind that had killed my grandmother. History repeating, Mom joked weakly from her hospital bed. Don't say that. Why not? It's true, I'm 62, she was 86. I'm getting the better deal. I held her hand. It felt small, fragile. You're going to be fine. Maybe, maybe not. But if I'm not, I need you to know something. Mom, listen, I wasted 20 years being angry at you for living your life. 20 years we could have spent actually knowing each other. I don't want Ruth to make the same mistake with you. She won't. You can't know that. Kids grow up. They make their own choices. Sometimes those choices hurt, but that doesn't mean they're wrong. She squeezed my hand. Let her be herself, even when it scares you, even when it hurts. Let her choose. I will. Promise me. I promise. Mom survived. The treatment worked. She came out of it weaker, but somehow stronger too. Like she'd shed something heavy she'd been carrying for years. She started coming over more, playing with Ruth, teaching her to bake, telling her stories about my grandmother. Not the perfect, distant woman from my childhood. The real woman. The one who'd loved jazz music and hated gardening and cried during sad movies. Your great-grandmother made mistakes, Mom told Ruth. She lived a life she didn't choose. But at the end, she tried to make it right. She gave your mama freedom. And that's the best thing anyone can give. Ruth listened with serious eyes. What did Mama do with her freedom? She chose your daddy. She chose this house. She chose you. That's good. That's everything. Devin and I celebrated our 10-year anniversary at the same cafe where I'd met Patricia Reynolds. It had changed ownership twice. The barista was new, but the table by the window was the same. Remember when you waited outside while I met with a mysterious stranger about my dead grandmother's secret baby? I said. Remember when I got stabbed trying to save your inheritance? Remember when we thought our lives were going to be normal? We both laughed. Our lives hadn't been normal. They'd been messy and complicated and occasionally dangerous. But they'd been ours. Every choice. Every consequence. Ours. I thought about my grandmother sometimes. Wondered what she'd think of Ruth, of our little house in Queens, of the life I'd built with the money she'd left me. I thought she'd be happy, not because of what I'd bought or accomplished, but because I'd chosen, every day, every moment. I'd chosen this life, this family, this path, and that was all she'd ever wanted for me. The brownstone in Brooklyn had been converted into a community center. I'd donated it to a nonprofit that helped young women escaping abusive families. They offered housing, counseling, job training, everything my grandmother never had, everything she'd wished she'd had when she was 19 and pregnant and scared. We went to the grand opening. Ruth ran through the rooms, exclaiming over the high ceilings and the chandelier in the foyer. Devin took pictures. Mom cried naturally. The director gave a speech, thanked me for the donation, talked about the women who'd already found safety within those walls, mentioned my grandmother's name. Ruth Rothman lived in this house for 54 years, she said, and now it'll help other women build the lives they deserve, the lives they choose. That's a legacy worth inheriting. I thought about Thomas Whitmore, about his anger and his bitterness and his conviction that I'd stolen something from him. He'd been wrong. You can't steal freedom. You can't steal the right to choose. Those things have to be given. My grandmother had given them to me, and I was passing them on, to Ruth, to the women in the brownstone, to everyone who needed permission to choose themselves. That was the inheritance that mattered, not money or jewelry or real estate, the knowledge that you're allowed to want different things, to make different choices, to live a life that makes sense to you even if it confuses everyone else, and the courage to do it anyway. Ruth pulled on my hand. Mama, can we go inside? I want to see everything. Of course, sweetheart. We walked through the brownstone together, past the room where my grandmother had written letters to a man she'd loved and lost, past the kitchen where she'd made Sunday dinners for a family that didn't understand her, past the bedroom where she'd died, alone, with only her regrets for company. But the rooms didn't feel sad anymore. They felt alive, filled with hope and possibility and choice, filled with women who were writing their own stories, making their own choices, building their own lives. My grandmother would have loved that. The idea that her biggest regret had become someone else's greatest opportunity, that the cage she'd lived in was now a door opening outward. What do you think, Ruth? I asked. Pretty nice, right? It's beautiful, she said. Like a castle. Want to know a secret? Yeah. Your great-great-grandmother lived here, and she was kind of like a princess in a castle. Except she wasn't really happy. Why not? Because she didn't get to choose her castle. Someone chose it for her. Ruth thought about that. That's sad. It is. But you know what makes it better? What? Now lots of people get to choose. They get to decide what their castles look like, where they want to live, what they want to do, and that's because of her. Ruth smiled. So she's like a fairy godmother. Exactly like that. We left the brownstone as the sun was setting. The light caught the windows just right, making them glow gold. Like the building itself was happy, like it had finally found its purpose. Devin put his arm around me. Ruth skipped ahead, humming some song she'd learned at school. Mom walked beside us, quieter than usual. She'd be proud, Mom said softly. I know. I mean it. Of everything you've done, everything you've become. She'd be so proud. Are you? Mom stopped walking, looked at me with tears in her eyes. Yes. God, yes, I'm so proud I can barely breathe sometimes, even though I didn't follow the plan. Especially because you didn't follow the plan. You made your own plan, your own life, and it's beautiful. We stood there on the sidewalk in Brooklyn, 3 generations of women who'd learned the hard way that the most important thing you can give someone is permission to be themselves. Even when it's scary, even when it hurts, even when it means watching them walk away from everything you thought they should want. My grandmother had given me that gift at the end of her life. I was giving it to Ruth from the beginning of hers. And maybe that was how you break cycles, how you change patterns, how you turn inheritances into something worth having, not by passing down money or jewelry or brownstones, but by passing down choice, freedom, the courage to be yourself even when the whole world tells you to be someone else. That was worth more than $2.3 million, worth more than any amount of money, worth everything. Ruth called back to us. Come on, I want ice cream. Devin laughed. Kid knows what she wants. Just like her mother, Mom said. Just like her great-grandmother, I corrected. We walked toward the ice cream shop, the 3 of us, with Ruth running ahead. The city moved around us, full of people making choices, living lives, building futures. And we were part of it, fully, completely, without apology. My grandmother had said I'd never be part of the family if I kept living like that. And she'd been right, in a way. I'd never be part of the family she'd known, the one built on rules and expectations and obligation, the one that demanded conformity as the price of belonging. But I was part of something better, a family built on choice, on acceptance, on love that didn't come with conditions, a family that was still figuring itself out but trying, genuinely trying to do better. And that was an inheritance worth keeping, worth protecting, worth passing down to Ruth and anyone else who needed it. We got our ice cream, sat outside even though it was getting cold. Ruth got chocolate all over her face. Devin tried to take artistic photos of it. Mom laughed until she cried. And I thought about my grandmother one last time, pictured her at 19, in love with a jazz musician, pregnant and scared and about to lose everything. Pictured her at 86, dying alone, writing letters to a dead man, leaving everything to the granddaughter who disappointed her. She'd lived 2 lives, one for everyone else, one, at the very end, for herself. The first life had been long and respectable and empty. The second life had lasted only a few weeks, but it had meant everything. She'd chosen me, chosen to give me what she'd never had, chosen to break the cycle even though it cost her everything. I'd make sure Ruth knew that story, make sure she understood that sometimes love looks like letting go. Sometimes family means supporting people even when they choose paths you don't understand. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give is permission to leave. My grandmother had been trapped her whole life, but in the end, she'd set me free. And I'd used that freedom well, built something real, something honest, something mine. That was her legacy. Not the money or the brownstone or the jewelry, the freedom she'd given me, the permission to choose, the courage to be myself, and I'd be damned if I'd waste it. Ruth finished her ice cream and leaned against me, sticky and tired and perfect. I love you, Mama. I love you too, sweetheart. Will I get to choose my castle when I grow up? You'll get to choose everything. Promise? Promise. And I meant it. Whatever Ruth wanted, wherever she went, however she chose to live, I'd support her, fight for her, give her the same freedom my grandmother had given me, because that's what inheritance should really mean, not possessions passed down through generations, but possibilities, opportunities, the knowledge that you're allowed to want different things. My grandmother had died giving me that gift. I'd spend the rest of my life making sure Ruth understood she already had it, from birth, from before birth, from the moment I decided to keep choosing myself, even when it was hard. That was love, that was family, that was everything. We walked home as the streetlights flickered on, Ruth between us holding both our hands, Mom trailing behind, still wiping her eyes and laughing at nothing, and somewhere, somehow, I felt my grandmother smiling, finally, at peace, finally free, finally knowing that her sacrifice hadn't been wasted. I'd built a life she never could, and someday, Ruth would build a life I couldn't imagine, and that would be perfect. That would be exactly right, because that's what freedom looks like, what inheritance really means, what love actually is, the courage to let go, the strength to choose, the wisdom to know that the best thing you can give someone is permission to be themselves. My grandmother had given me that, and I'd pass it on, generation after generation, until nobody remembered a time when women weren't allowed to choose. When love came with conditions, when family meant conformity or nothing, we'd build something better, starting with this messy, complicated, beautiful life. This family that was still learning how to love without controlling, how to support without demanding, how to be present without requiring conformity. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Every choice, every consequence, every moment. And that was worth more than any inheritance could ever be.